I want to apologize real fast if you hear purring. That is little Miss Evie. Insert picture here. Yeah, she's very cute. Hello all, Kadrina here. We're going to take a slight detour and review the lovely book A Gentleman in Moscow by Amar Twells, who also wrote the book Rules of Civility. This book was published in 2016 and is 462 pages long. It spans several decades and is broken up into 5 books or sections. The book follows Count Alexander Rosov, who is put under house arrest in the Metropole Hotel for a poem he wrote and how he comes to terms with a changing anti-aristocratic Russia after the fall of the Romanov. This book itself is very well written and has all of the wit of a gentleman. It was originally recommended to me by my grandmother in early September and then thrusted into my lap in October, so I have had a long time to prepare for this video for you. This book was originally set in 1992, where the Count is put on the trial for a poem he published under his name. I very much enjoyed the start as the Count uses his polite manners to outplay the new communist regime. By the end of the exchange, he has denied nothing but owned nothing, leaving them utterly confused. In the early days, the Count continues to use his prim and proper training to get the better hand of his adversaries. So, a little bit about the cast and characters. The main character, Alexander Rosov, is referred to often as the Count by the story, and he maintains it throughout the decades as Russia evolves further and further away from its aristocratic ways. However, as he has pointed out several times through his musings, that only the regime has changed. For the most part, this story follows the Count and shows his point of view for the events of the Metropole Hotel, where he is under house arrest. However, occasionally it does switch focus and you see different points of view. The Metropole Hotel is a famous hotel near the Kremlin that actually acts as a posh mall of sorts, with several restaurants of various degrees, a bar, a barber shop, a flower shop, and a tailor. Prior to the start of the book, the Count has been living there for 4 years after removing his grandmother, his last living relative, to Paris at the start of the revolution. He states that he has taken up residence at this hotel due to him vowing never leaving Moscow again, after originally fleeing to Paris after a duel. While he was there, his only sister Helena had passed away, leaving him rather guilt-stricken. So at 30 years old, the Count is sent to live in this 6-story hotel at the very top of the hotel, on the 6th floor, which was once relegated to the servants. Other pivotal characters include Nina, bright girl and daughter of a Ukrainian diplomat, who the Count meets when she is 6 years old. He sees glimmers of her life over the next 2 decades through bits and snippets such as her experiments in the Red Room or her dinner date with 2 young men. Eventually, though, the last we see of Nina is when she brings her own 6-year-old daughter, Sophia, for the Count to watch for a few weeks due to her husband being sent to a labor camp. However, Nina never returns as the Count becomes responsible for this girl, a task he at first is reluctant towards, but then becomes passionate about as he finally leaves the metropole. Additionally, we have Anna, his lover, and an actress. They meet when he stops her dogs from tearing through the lobby, and Anna finds him infuriating with his rather cool as a cucumber demeanor and affinity to order. Despite sleeping with him, she is so annoyed with the fact he hung up her blouse, she ends up leaving a pile of clothes on the floor before there is none left on the racks, before tossing them all out the window in rage. Eventually, though, they do become constant lovers after she falls out of favor with the Russian government, and it continues as she gains popularity again. She also acts as a pseudo-mother to Sophia, to the point even the Bolsheviks wonder if she is the girl's true mother, and thus leaves her in the care of the former person, the Count. The other characters in the cast of characters include Emil, the short-tempered chef of the 5-star restaurant, the Boyarsky, Andrei, the host of the restaurant, the bishop, a cheeky former waiter at the Plaza, another restaurant who the Count butts heads with over the years, Marina, the hotel's seamstress, the front desk man, Arkady, and Osip, a former Red Army officer and later chief administrator of the secret police in Russia, who asks the Count to teach him about other cultures, then later becomes movie buddies of all things. Other characters from abroad dip in and out of his life. The most prolific is his old college friend, Mishka, or I'm going to butcher this name, Mikhail Fedorovich Mindich, a writer and professor who is at first enthusiastic with the new regime, but as time goes on becomes more disenchanted. A bit of a spoiler, but it later turns out he's the one that wrote the poem that sentenced the Count to the hotel. The logic of publishing it under Alexander's name was that they were not going to shoot an aristocrat. His last work is one of pure spite, where he points out that the importance of the word bread in Russian literature to symbolize the hungry after having to remove 5 sentences on the matter from a letter by Chabosky. I love the men in this. Really, I love all of the characters in this. They all are multi-dimensional. The book shows them at their best and at their worst, as they try to survive in a regime where nothing has truly changed, but where distrust is tolerated even less. On top of no one wanting to mention anything about old Russia, The Count occasionally feels isolated, but is never long. And going back to the character called the Bishop, who acts as the Count's adversary, his character is superb. Basically, he's first seen as a bumbling waiter in the plaza, a more open restaurant around a fountain, where the Count actually meets Nina. The Count is instantly put off by him and his lack of etiquette, dubbing him the Bishop. In turn, this poor young man is thoroughly embarrassed when the Count uses his knowledge to upstage the bad wine recommendation the Bishop gives. A little aside, the Count hates vodka, but is wine aficionado, which is used against him when the Bishop is promoted to the Boyarsky due to nepotism and demand all the wine labels are removed so that they can only serve white and red wine at random. But don't worry, the labels are restored when the higher-ups become annoyed with the choice. So thank goodness. But eventually, the Bishop becomes manager of the hotel, and so he can further spy for the Bolsheviks. He acts as the final boss for the Count to overcome in his dash of freedom. But yeah, where I'm going with this rant is I really love the characters because he is the personification of the new guard of Russia. The man who is so insecure and ordinary. He wants everybody to be ordinary like him, and uses fear and power to make everything the same, as he did with the wine bottles. But the wine is still different and unique on the inside and to a degree on the outside with the types of bottles they use, as the Count is able to pick up a couple of these bottles and take them for himself. He is the adversary for the old aristocratic Russia, where they are not above stepping on people's throats, but subtly. And when the Count is faced with the choice of killing the Bishop for his freedom, this new Russia, the old Russia sensibility shines through. Osip even later comments when an officer ponders why the Count did not shoot the Bishop, that it is because he is not an aristocrat. A reference earlier in the book where the Count admits to fleeing after shooting an aristocrat who had wronged his sister, and before when he explained the rules of engagement to Nina. Remarked how many steps between the two adversaries depended on the slight. Say what you want about the serfdom Russia of the Tsars, or communism in general. Both do have their advantages and their detractors. I'm not going to argue for either, but this book makes a compelling point, and again, that you fundamentally cannot change your nature, but nurture is very important to what kind of person you become. And it is really a powerful tale, and one of my new favorites. As a small warning though, there are mentions of suicide in this book, and the Count tries to take his life twice, before ultimately being led away by acts of faith. So if this is a sensitive topic to you, it may not be the book for you, but otherwise I highly recommend this book. I even bought my own copy. Thanks, Grandma. Anyhow, I'm going to end it here. Thanks for listening, and I will see you next time as I review The Clockmaker's Daughter by Kate Morton.